This painting is called An Excellent Glass of Wine. And it was made by Gerard Portilje, who's a 19th century painter in Antwerp. We call it Antwerpen. And Antwerp is a city in Belgium. Belgium is the place where I'm from. But I teach in Holland, in the Netherlands, which actually happens to be only a 30-minute drive away from my house. And I decided to show you this picture because it sort of symbolizes how middle-aged European men like me spend our days. So we drink wine, we have conversations. That's what we do. And by the way, in this presentation will be about 16, 17 minutes of me talking, but then a lot of possibilities for Q&A. So, as I was about 6 weeks ago drinking my wine and having a light conversation with my colleagues, something happened. Namely, a colleague of mine sent this email. So I read and I said, Zappos CEO Tony Hsieh, I didn't know you had to pronounce it Hsieh at the time, but found out later, adopt Holacracy or leave. Great. And then one of my colleagues said, well, I have a feeling that this sounds a little bit like this. My book, Organized with Chaos, which I wrote back in 1996 for the first time, and then we've developed it since then. So I got that message and I thought, wow, I definitely have to look into this. Now I had a quick look at the memo. I mean, it was 9 in the morning, students were coming in, I had to lecture around 10. So I had a quick look over the memo and this was my reaction. I was shocked, I was perplexed, I was even angry. And the reason why I was angry is that back in the mid-90s, 1990s, when I had started experiencing change management at some organizations and was also studying change, because change management is also my field of research, there was this, business process reengineering. Back in 1991, this was presented as the solution for all our management problems. Just re-engineer the organization and everything will be fine. So it was a little bit like this. Not sure if you know these characters. This magician or druid, in Belgium we call him panoramix, but I think here it's called getafix. And I sort of had the feeling, oh, this guy Tony Hsieh, he probably went on a seminar somewhere, he heard some great ideas, was extremely inspired, came back into the office on Monday and said, now everybody's got to do this, I'm going to show them the right way, the light, and it's going to be a magical potion. However, from my experience in the past, from the mid-90s, was that business process reengineering actually created a lot of suffering. It was used to downsize. So 10,000s of people at Kodak, at GE, at all sorts of other places were let go because of business process reengineering. So my initial reaction was, and by the way, this is another painter from my city, but more modern one, Sam Dillemans. My reaction was, this memo is going to come like a punch in the face to many people. And not only that, most likely people will also punch back. Now, I'm not saying that the memo didn't have good intentions, that's another story. But that's sort of what I felt would happen, and I was very concerned. Now, then I started research because I realized I'd only briefly gone through the memo. Let me now really go through it. So I read it in full, more than once, and I spent some time learning about your company. Because I had heard of Zappos, I had heard just the name and that it's a participative organization and interesting, but that's all I knew. Because as you also know, we cannot buy Zappos products in Europe. But then I went on the internet and I saw the YouTube clips and interviews with people, and I checked out what Tony was saying, and I checked out what Frederick was saying, who then I also found out is also a Belgian, which was kind of nice. I could follow him in French. And as all of this kind of came together, I realized that well, the memo could also have a different effect on people. It could be a punch, and as I've also heard, yes, for some people it was, but it also could have been this. Namely, this is a picture I took in the airport of Valencia in Spain, and it says, for those who speak Spanish, la risa les hace fuertes, so laughter makes them strong. And when I look at the Zappos culture, it's kind of this kid, which is playful, but feels it's more powerful than it may be, but okay, that's great. And so the memo also could have this effect on you, namely to help people to grow even more. And to grow to become this person. Not sure if you know this, but this is Stromae. He's a Belgian pop singer. He's been touring the US now also. And one of his famous songs is Je suis formidable. I am amazing. So those were the things that were going in my mind. And of course, I then decided it's important to start following the news. Because one question in my mind was, how are Zapponians going to react to this? What will happen? Well, the answers came. Well, first of all, I know things were boiling, but then the answers came, and I took this from, I think, Wall Street and Fortune and the other ones. At Zappos, some employees find offer to leave too good to refuse, about 14% accept their severance, etc., etc. When reading this, I asked myself, well, 14% of people leaving, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is it too much? Is it too little? What does it mean? And although I have a lot of background on change management, I couldn't come up with an answer. My feeling was really like this. I just felt silent. And I know that when a person feels silent about an issue, it's best not to push it, not to rationalize it, but just to, see what happens, kind of go with it. And then I read this. John Bunch's comment. Whatever the number of people who took the offer was the right number as they made the decision that was right for them and right for Zappos. Now, this comment, and I saw it in all the different articles, I certainly kind of saw that one resonated with me. And the reason why it resonated with me is that the 14% who decided to leave, they made an excellent decision for themselves, even if it may have been a painful one, and they made an excellent decision for Zappos. So there's no blame there. Nothing wrong with those people and their decision. At the same time, the 86% who decided to stay, they also made the right decision for themselves and for Zappos as an organization. And I would even say there's not even a reason for applause there, because both sides, no, sides is the wrong word, both groups made a choice which made a lot of sense for them and made a lot of sense for Zappos. So, I'm a bit too quick. So this being said, it's very important to honor whatever decision was made by people, because that was right for them and for the organization. Now, of course, people in the media don't always see things that way, and especially if you have a mindset that is still thinking in terms of us versus them, which is a mindset that many people embrace in the world out there, and especially the media likes that image because then they can write articles. But these are some of the comments that I read. Like, it seems that those who left are those who go up by pushing others down. I personally dislike these middle management guys. So all these comments from people who have no clue what Zappos really is, or how the culture is, or how people treat each other, and then they kind of come up with this. Now, in my talk, I will actually go a little bit back in the past by taking two of the classic theories on motivation. And I really love this picture, that classic theories can help us move ahead. And if they don't, just throw them away, take another one. Yeah. But they can make us move ahead, and a famous one is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sometime I spent like 2 hours on this pyramid with students at the Academy of Hotel Management back in the Netherlands. But I won't do that with you now, but you have this one. And then the other theory is by Frederick Herzberg, developed in the 1960s at Harvard. And I will say a few things about his theory today and apply it to Zappos. Because in my mind, it so much resonates to what was going on in people's minds when they were making the decision. Now, to briefly tell you what the theory is about, Frederick Herzberg said that when we do work, there are really two things taking place. And he made a division between what he calls motivator factors and what he calls hygiene factors. Now, hygiene is a little bit of a silly word because then you think about personal hygiene, but we can also call it the motivator factors are the job content, and hygiene factors is the organizational context. So what did Herzberg notice is that, well, all of us, when we are motivated, or what motivates us, is really the job itself. So if it is picking up the phone and being engaged with customers, and you love doing that, then you're motivated to do that. If it is sitting together with your team and brainstorming and seeing if you can align each other or conflict resolution, then that's the actual job is the thing that motivates you. And of course, if you look at your own job, you will realize, yes, there is that aspect here for my work at Zappos. And then you have these other things, organizational context. So of course, your compensation, your pay, the company policy, the fact that you have a specific culture, which is wow, and you know what that is like. The supervisory style, which has now changed. But it can also be status. Like for some people, having a management title or saying on their resume, I worked for Zappos or I worked for Deutsche Bank or I worked for whatever is important. Security. And I've noticed that at least for American standards, Zappos is an organization that gives quite strong level of security in terms of pay and being here. Level of security similar to what we have in Europe, where the security level is often a bit higher. And then working conditions. Now, the interesting thing about Herzberg is he found out in his research that people can do a boring job for a long time. So, let's say I am the CEO of Deutsche Bank. I hate sitting around with these other, mostly guys, around the table in their gray suits, arguing all day long. But at the end of the month, I get a huge pay. I dream about my new Ferrari that I want to order. And, we're going to go to Marbella next summer for holiday. And you say, well, I can live with the fact that I have to sit with these boring men in a gray suit because the jelly beans are great. Herzberg used to call it the jelly bean. So all the organizational context is great. So those people can keep on doing that job that they don't really like as long as the organizational context is great. But Herzberg also found out that the moment you start taking that away, the hygiene factors away, then suddenly the job becomes the most horrible thing you ever had to do. So if you tell this Deutsche Bank CEO, well, from now on, we're not going to pay you so much anymore, or you'll have to work in a team, forget the Ferrari, then suddenly they say, oh, I hate my job, never want to do this. Yeah? So Herzberg, in that way, also found out that if you really, truly want to motivate people, then you work on job content. It doesn't really help to tell the Deutsche Bank manager, well, you already have one Ferrari, but how about we give you 2 Ferraris? Will you work harder? Probably not. Well, according to Herzberg, not. Only when you give that person a new challenge will they be motivated. And I mean, the good news is, I read in the newspaper about 2 weeks ago back in Belgium, that several managers or top managers have actually decided to quit their high-paying jobs for something that is closer to their heart. Working for a non-profit or starting their own bed and breakfast or what have you. So those things are also happening. Now, what happened to to all of you the last couple of weeks? You were doing this. And if I go to the hygiene factors first, so the moment you go to a bossless organization, well, what changes, of course, is supervisory style. What changes could be status. What changes could be security. Because inside your mind, you're thinking, okay, what's next? Or you could be thinking, I'm good as a manager, and would I be good at not being a manager? I mean, this makes you feel uncomfortable. It's normal, it's human. And it's very possible that people then said, well, the left side, so the motivator factors of my job are not big enough to say that I'll stay here. No, because all the other things, for me, are not certain anymore. And I'm quite certain that people of those 14% said, okay, then I go. But also people like you are still sitting here today may have made that choice, saying, well, but Zappos does offer security. Like every time they did something, they keep their, they do what they say, which is different from organizations that say our people are our greatest assets, and then next week, 10,000 have to go. This is not happening here. And so that was what went on, but also, and I think that was part of why the memo was also sent, focusing more on the motivator factors. Because for some people, being in a jobless situation, not jobless, in a bossless situation, can be highly stimulating. You don't know where it will end up, but you say, wow, I can learn a lot here. I can do things, and this is a company where, sure, if I make some mistakes, that's fine. I don't get punished, I don't get fired, things that can happen. So you actually find your job suddenly much more exciting. Previously, you were doing a few things that you say, well, it's not thrilling, it's not boring, but it's kind of like in between. And now you say, there's an additional thrill to my job. And you may have said, oh, holacracy, okay, it's got all this bizarre terminology, but fine, I'll delve into it, I'll work with it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but at least for me that it's something that is enriching my situation. And therefore, I made that choice. Now, the beauty of what Frederick Herzberg also showed is that both motivator factors and hygiene factors have equal value. It depends where you are in life. Yeah? Now, today, I'm married. We have a 19-month-year-old baby. And I really like the hygiene factors. I'm very glad that at my university I've got tenure. So it's extremely hard to get rid of me. Not that they want to, but it's extremely hard, And there's a bunch of other conveniences that I really like. And this time, and it's funny, if 20 years ago they'd asked me, fly to Las Vegas, I would have said yes right away. This time I was really thinking, but it's going to be a long flight, and I don't know these people, and I'm going to miss our daughter, and the jet lag, and oh. And then my wife kept telling me, go, it is an opportunity, and your boss wants to pay, go, go, go. But again, I'm the same guy as I probably was 20 years ago, but the decision-making is different. Decision-making is different. And all of us, in that sense, make the right choices. Yeah? So again, no blame, but an honoring and a learning of what happened. So, I want to finish this brief talk with these lines from Stromae. Tu étais formidable, j'étais formidable, nous étions formidables. Formidable. What it means is, you were amazing. And then he makes a joke on the language saying, I was a little bit less than amazing. But together, we were amazing. And that's what I want to leave with you and with Zappos.